litigate or not to litigate? That might be the question.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Greetings, Kimasabi's on this Thursday evening. I'm going to forego the usual hit to a couple of different fields at the top of the show because Joe Larisa is my guest, and he and I usually have lengthy conversations about important issues. I haven't had Joe on in a while, other than the radio where I've been touching base with him based on little bit of murmurs out there and his own op-ed, which gave an indication that he may be interested in getting into the game again on gaming. Get it? And last night we had a conversation with the GOP Chairman Brendan Bell, which we'll remind you of in a little bit, that led me to think that we really need to bring Joe in here. Joe's a former East Providence mayor. He's been very active in the past in Republican politics, but is really one of the brains on the issues of constitutionality and gaming in this state. And we've had some moments. You know, if you remember, we had a Harrah's casino argument. That seems like a long time ago, because I guess maybe it was. We've had a couple of referendums recently where we've had passage of expansion of gaming, and now we're at the sports gaming place, which is becoming even more hyperbolic, I think, in terms of its focus because of the online gaming growth. So here are a few headlines to remind you where we've been. The State House went ahead and approved sports betting, right? Here's another headline. This is the Republicans saying, I don't think so. And here's an op-ed headline from Joe's writing about the voters' option here. Now, part of that, we introduced Joe. Welcome, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dan.
The thing that separates this now, I think, and makes it a bigger deal, is that the House and the Senate, waiting for the governor's signature, just passed online version of sports betting, which certainly accelerates the conversation. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. First, let's establish your involvement and expertise in this matter. This is not your first potential rodeo, right?
No, way back. Working for Governor Lincoln Almond in the town of Charlestown, I was actively involved in Narragansett Indian tribal matters, and if you remember back in the 90s, that largely consisted of the quest for a casino. A Harrah's casino, in cooperation with the tribe, was actually supposed to be put on the ballot for approval. And back then I pointed out that, wait a second, that's a private casino. The Constitution requires state-operated lotteries.
And they used what, 04?
04,
04,
you got
yeah,
it. And
right,
you covered that extensively. You were actually in the court when I made my oral argument.
Yeah, it was intense.
Yes.
It was.
But nobody realized this, and it was my position versus all the entrenched interests, and the Supreme Court sided with us. No, the casino's private, it's not state-operated, and that was the end of the Harrah's casino. It wouldn't even go on the ballot.
But slow down,
sure.
slow down on that, because I think all these things, these intricate memories about that case are important. You argued successfully about the private nature of the ownership of the facility. We here in Rhode Island have approved gaming sanctioned by the state, operated by the state.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
At least up until that time. Well, and still, so to speak. I mean, Twin River is a private company. We'll have to talk about how that all folds together here in a minute. The winning argument was, say it slowly again.
We are unique in all 50 states. The Constitution first prohibited all lotteries in the state up until 1971. There were no lotteries. Mm-hmm. Then it was amended with a narrow clause that said, except those authorized by the General Assembly and operated by the state. Okay. So you could only have state-operated lotteries. The video lottery terminals at a minimum, which the casinos get most of their money from, the overwhelming belt, are pure lotteries. The Harrah's casino was going to be a private operation with Harrah's and the tribe.
Hold the thought, because a lot of people don't know this, the chicken or the egg syndrome. At least on the VLT basis, the VLTs are state lottery tools. They are in the casino now. Used to be the racetrack, Twin River, and now Tiverton. They actually are commissioned agents to run those VLTs.
People did not know it back then and probably forget now. Those
yeah,
are state-operated,
right.
but located in the casinos.
Right. Now-
the central processing center is operated by the state. All the money comes to the state, and then the state doles it out. It's a state-operated operation.
Gotcha. And so the Harris thing was out of whack because
Was privately operated by a private giant casino entity, Harris, who would take all the money, operate the games just like they do in their other casinos throughout the country. Was it going to be operated by the state? It's going to be regulated by the state.
So it never got to referendum.
Correct.
That's what your argument was, that it should not go to referendum. There was never an attempt by the General Assembly to change the nature of the law, so to speak. Although there was law written, it was really kind of interesting. What could they have done back in '04 to beat your case?
Well, they could have nothing, and here's why. The nothing is business reality. The main difference between a state-operated facility and a private one is money. Harris was only going to give the state 25%.
That's it.
State was getting over 50 and still is from the
Right.
VLTs.
Gotcha.
So they're never going to give the state 50%.
Now I remember, exactly. Okay, so now fast forward, we've had referendums in 12 and 16, which have allowed for additional gaming
Yes.
at Twin River.
State-operated additional gaming, yes. So that was no longer the issue. They went in, state-operated additional gaming. There were already casinos. They called themselves casinos.
Well, I used to get nuts over that. They
Yeah.
would call themselves a casino and weren't really operating as
Just had
one.
VLT.
Yes.
So how do you get to a casino from video lottery terminals? 2 words, table games. Have to add the table games, the roulette, the baccarat, all the stuff
Poker,
that you play on the
blackjack.
tables.
Right.
Right, poker, blackjack. So they put on the ballot state-operated table games. Fine. Then in the explanation, what are the table games? Poker, blackjack, all the games you mentioned right there. That's how you do it. The voters knew table games would be added to the casino, and all is good. And they put in a secret little clause there. Not only did the voters approve table games, they said, they put in something different than a new type of gaming, which voters are entitled to approve, plus everything else that's contained in an Indian gaming law, 25 USC Class 3 gaming. What's that? Nobody knew what that was. It's not a type of game like table games is a type of game. You see,
It's a
feel, touch, you know.
classification.
And in fact, that classification includes all types of games. Every type of game that could be in a casino. So they put that in, going all in. Hey, what do we got to lose? We've got the table games. Let's throw this in and we'll never have to go back to the voters unless someone challenges it. And that's where we are today.
Okay. The idea, and let's clarify, that even the table games are state operated, but the take is different. The casino gets a better take from the table games than it does from the VLTs, I do believe.
Yeah, it's slightly. I think the state still gets a huge chunk, by far the majority of the money, yes.
Right. The state's always done very well in terms, at least, owning and sponsoring its own gaming. Even with the sports betting, the ratio
Same
that they've
thing
got, they got a big chunk
51,
of change.
yep.
Okay, so we move forward to today, and we have this atmosphere in America where states are poised based on a New Jersey federal decision by the U.S. Supreme Court that allowed for states to go ahead and operate their own sports betting operations. The nature of that lawsuit was what?
Well, it was a lawsuit by New Jersey and other states involving an arcane federal law and different issues here that basically said that it's illegal in 49 out of 50 states, and there was a states' rights issue there, and it was a weird alliance of the court. But in any event, the bottom line is there's no more federal ban on sports betting unless Congress expressly puts one on it, and
Right.
Congress isn't and won't do
And
that.
our whistle here in Rhode Island was so wet for that the governor actually put in millions of dollars in the budget, even preliminary to the decision coming
Yes.
out, way ahead of her skis because she had to pull back a lot of money. There was $25 million in the former fiscal year budget that never materialized, at least in the number she was looking for, because the actual case came out late, and then the uptime to be able to get sports betting going. All right, so that's kind of where it was. And in November, they authorized sports betting on a General Assembly basis. And some would say, including my guest, they forgot to ask us. When we come back, we'll talk about that, because that could be the case. Stay with us. So we're talking sports betting. The new sports book is open. And full disclosure, by the way, I don't have a philosophical problem at all with sports betting. At first, there was kind of a twinge. I'm kind of a purist, but I have made bets in that facility, 3, just kind of to sample it, and I find it to be interesting and fun. Probably not going to be a personal habit. I also have done paid commercials for Twin River in terms of marketing that, because at the time I made a decision to say yes to the request to do so. I thought I wasn't going to die on a hill that nobody seemed to be. It's like, it's like the old Animal House movie, when John Belushi runs out of the front, let's go! And he turns around, there's nobody behind him. I think there's a constitutional problem here, but if the tree doesn't fall in the woods, doesn't make any noise, all these analogies. Whatever. Sports betting approved by the General Assembly, you say faux pas, wrong, should not have happened, had to come to the voters. Because?
Article 6, Section 22 of the Constitution, Dan, is very clear. Any new types of gambling, the people, not the politicians, make the final call. So it wasn't wrong that the General Assembly approved it. What the Constitution says is once they act, it has to now go to the people for approval.
Well, they approved it without establishing a referendum.
Correct. And how did we get this provision in there? It was very clear. In the early 90s, Governor Sondland put video lottery terminals, state-operated ones, into the budget, and voila, we had these hundreds and hundreds of video lottery terminals in Newport and in Lincoln, never approved by anybody, no hearings, nothing. It just went into the General Assembly budget. And anti-casino advocates went crazy over this and said, how? Because there was a statutory requirement back then that all expansions, new types of gambling had to go to the voters. But when you've got it in statute, what did the General Assembly and Governor do? They just amended the statute to exempt video lottery terminals. So the people said never again, and were so successful that in 1994 they got on the ballot the constitutional prohibition that says no expansion in the types of gambling shall be valid unless it's approved by the voters. So never again. And here we are again.
Right. So back in 2016, we 2012 we approved the expansion of the table game. What we thought was the table game expansion at Twin River. In 16, we approved the move to Tiverton because Newport, interestingly, turned down casino gaming at Newport while the state approved it in 2012. Right. The argument that the casino, the state, the vendors all make is, look, that expansion that you talked about, all the games that you could think of is covered. And they talk about Class 1 and 2 gaming, which is cited in there. Which does not,
actually not.
Well, they say that there's a reference somewhere, legal reference.
To Class 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, Class 3.
Right.
And Class 3 is everything that isn't included in the game that you can think of now, really, kind of thing. So if I come up with another table game, that's included.
Everything.
Right. So why doesn't that cover sports gaming?
Because look at the words you use. It's covered. It's in there. The question you've got to ask is, how did the voters know what type of new gaming they were approving? Everybody agrees they've got to approve new types of gambling. With video lottery terminals, they already had those. With table games, it's right in the question, such as table games, and then list them. Very clear. That's how you do it. How did they know they were approving sports betting? Covered. What does that mean? Is it in the question? No. Is it in the explanation? No. What's in the explanation? All games covered under an arcane Indian law entitled Class 3 Gaming. Well, what's that? No voter in the state knew what that was. And then if they wanted to find out, they'd go open federal law. Oh, look at this, Class 3 Gaming. What's that? Oh, it must say sports betting in there. No. It says Class 3 Gaming is everything that's not Class 1 or Class 2 gaming. So where is it? So it doesn't even reference this Code of Federal Regulations section, which you got to be a legal expert and research artist to find, says way down in the bottom of this Code of Federal Regulations, oh yes, sports betting is Class 3 gaming. That's not voter approval. That's not covered. Nobody knew about it.
It's really interesting because when you go to the sports book, once you kind of feel it inside the casino, you feel like it's just another thing that they have at the casino. But there's a difference, I guess, you're arguing between what you think and feel and what is constitutionally allowable.
Well, Dan, even if you think and feel it, clearly sports betting is a totally different type of gambling than video lottery terminals and table games. Why? Well, let's start with the United States Congress didn't outlaw the first two. They sure as heck outlawed sports betting and treated it very differently. Why? Because the first two, all the odds and how you determine if you win or lose are decided in the casino, with odds in the casino, in the game built in. Sports betting has nothing to do with what's in the casino. It's third parties outside the casino playing a competitive athletic activity, which makes it a completely different type of gambling and subject to completely different rules than the other two types. And yet the proponents of this say, it's all the same thing, the voters approved it, it's covered.
All right. You are always animated when you are strong in your belief on something. It makes you a great advocate. You wrote an op-ed piece on this. Are you shopping for a client? In other words, is your public advocacy motive, which I know is sincere, it needs to be coupled by somebody who says, Joe, I'll pay you to do this. I mean, you're not going to do this for pro bono, but you're probably not looking to make an arm and a leg on this thing, but you got to have a real client. So who is the real client?
Well, we talked about this 8 months ago, the same thing. This is a public interest case as far as I'm concerned. The issue is the process of the Constitution must be followed. If they don't follow it here, when are they going to bypass it next? And we've already seen that happen, Dan. We've seen it go from sports gaming to this new radically different idea of online sports gaming, which is really leading to an online casino. And you'll tell me to keep that thought.
Well, yeah, keep that thought for the next
But
segment.
as far
you need an advocate,
right? And we haven't had one, but finally we're getting close.
Well, here's Brandon Bell, the chairman of the state Republican Party, last night talking about A, whether they're in the market to be the client, and B, if they can afford it. The roll of the dice is that you're full of it, and you can't finance litigation, and there doesn't seem to be any other interested party to do that. So what is the story? You want the GOP to be the client?
GOP wouldn't be the client. I looked up our finances, and as of 2/10/19, $23,918.44.
Congratulations!
Available cash on hand.
Wow!
Now, it's another story if the Board of Elections would allow us to use any of those funds.
Or your own board would decide that you wanted to use those funds for litigation.
Yes.
You'd have to vote on that.
And we have more in the federal, and this could impact federal. Having said that,
Are you going to be a conduit to raise some dough to pay Larisa to do a lawsuit? That cuts to it.
the grassroots are interested in fighting this because of the good government aspect, or bad government in this case aspect, of not checking the constitutionality, having the people decide, not the politicians.
Okay, so looks like they want to be your client.
Yes, hopefully.
You think it's going to happen? And what's the timing?
We were at a 7 to 8 a few days ago. I think we're trending toward 8 to 9 out of 10 chance that this actually happens. And if it does, the timing is going to be in the next couple of weeks, as they just approved mobile sports betting, and any moment the governor's going to sign it.
All right, so we're going to talk about what the mobile sports betting does to aid his argument, if at all, when we come back. Stay with us.
You may end up with a situation where there's mobile sports betting. I'm concerned about that because I think it really makes it too easy for people to gamble, and you don't have maybe the controls. If you go and engage in sports betting at Twin River, you've got signs. Hey, if you got a problem, check in here.
Right.
We can help you. On your phone, where's that?
Right now, the actual accessibility and problem gaming worry that some have, like Professor Pat Kelly at PC, who just saw there, it's not necessarily germane to your constitutional case, correct?
I'm not fighting on the merits of whether sports gambling or online sports gambling is a good or bad thing. Correct.
Yeah, which is fascinating. So you are looking to establish standing to be able to argue this. Standing is kind of a sticky wicket sometimes. The court will say, interesting argument, but guess what? We're not going to decide it because you're not the party that should be bringing the case. Do you find that to be a challenge? And who would have standing as a client specifically? Category of?
Well, we talked before about somebody who actually bet and lost on an illegal sports betting. In fact, there's a federal circuit
Legal
court
or
case.
Illegal?
Well, on legal sports betting.
Right.
Well,
So
I say illegal because it shouldn't be played.
I have 2 losing tickets. I have standing to sue?
You should, but then the claim would be you want your money back because you were playing an unlawful game and didn't know it at the time. Now, would you win? Would you get your money back? That's not clear. But what is clear, you have standing to sue to claim that sports betting is unconstitutional because the voters didn't approve. Two different things.
Okay. That is very legalese.
Yes.
The weird part about this whole thing is that there are very many people who believe, as you do, that constitutionality needs to be respected here, but then they would vote yes on sports betting.
Right.
I fall into that category. I do think that the legislature messed up. Twin River kind of missed the ball here, and I argued heartily with the CEO at the time, especially because the delay came in, and they really weren't going to be up and running fully until late November, January at the best. That they could have in June when they approved this thing, they could have just slipped in a referendum. November could have been up. The people could have voted at 65-35, and we wouldn't be having any of these problems.
Right. And if they thought they were right, Dan, they could have asked the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion, and if that was negative, put it on the ballot.
The Republicans this week asked if they could do that, and they were voted down heartily on that because the legislature's all in now. I mean, they're all in.
Yes.
They're waiting to see if you will enter the fray,
Yep.
and it seems like you're the only guy that seems like he's interested in entering the fray, at least in modern time. Do you think that if and when you file this suit, it would have an effect on ongoing operations? In other words, would there be a stay on operations?
I'm not. The goal here is quick resolution, and since there's no facts in dispute here, it's a very straightforward constitutional issue. We'd try to get it right to the Supreme Court on an initial basis, and the Attorney General has the right to make that happen. We'll see where he ends up.
He's keeping his powder dry,
Yes.
Unless and until you file litigation.
Right.
Because we've had the Attorney General jump on your side in the past.
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting jump ball. I mean, the Attorney General generally defends the state, but sometimes he sees the state having done the wrong thing and has to come over on the other side.
Yes.
If you win, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. If you won, do you think they would stop the operations at Twin River in lieu of a referendum? I think they probably
If the
have to.
Supreme Court rules, then sports betting cannot validly be played under the Constitution until the people vote on it in November 2020. Yes.
You're a troublemaker.
I'm defending the people's right to vote in the Constitution, Dan. That's all this is about. The people, not the politicians, get the final say on an expansion of gambling.
Would you vote yes or no as a citizen on sports betting?
I don't know.
You
I
don't
don't
know?
know.
You haven't
It's
thought
not
about
even
it.
part of a...
You're tunnel vision right now. You were on the constitutional issue.
This is a process issue, yes. Defending the Constitution.
And tell me real quick, with 20 seconds left, why are institutions and constitutional process so important?
It's the foundation of democracy, Dan. Without process, you really don't have a government. And without rules and the Supreme Court to uphold them, we're a dictatorship.
We'll stay in touch.
We will.
Thanks, appreciate it. Joe Larisa. Final word when we come back. You know, back in 2004, Joe Larisa, they kind of made him out to be a gadfly, and then he rolled everybody at the Supreme Court. Take two, we shall see. We'll see if a client steps up and says, all right, I want to be represented in this. Again, I'd vote yes on sports betting all day long, but I do respect the process. I've been arguing it for a long time. Good night.